Chapter 2, Apple, the Forbidden Fruit, and the Psychedelic Mushroom. I obviously evolved in a world where projected messages lunged itself at me on a constant basis. Comparing the apple to the psychedelic mushroom proved to have a particularly special meaning. Apple was the icon for Mac computers and illustrates the forbidden fruit in the quote-unquote Garden of Eden. The Apple icon on Mac appears to have a bite mark, communicating that quote-unquote man has taken a bite of the forbidden fruit. When we use computers, we enter a world dynamic of virtual reality that is equivalent to the effects of taking psychedelic mushrooms. Psychedelic mushrooms fungi is considered to be the oldest form of life on quote-unquote Earth. The psychedelic mushroom is a single-celled organism that reproduces through its spores. The myelin sheath that is considered to be the psychedelic mushroom compound is beneath the epidermis layer of quote-unquote Earth's surface and blankets its entire landmass. This hidden fact is important to understand because the apple in the quote-unquote Garden of Eden is actually symbolic of the psychedelic mushroom, quote-unquote man, eating the psychedelic mushroom. The forbidden fruit reveals to quote-unquote man hidden knowledge that is supposed to remain hidden. The computer is my naked brain, consciously assimilating information that is projected on a black screen. Quote-unquote Eve, considering to be the computer/brain, snake in the garden, gives the forbidden fruit, the psychedelic mushroom/fruit, to Adam, quote-unquote man, to eat. Man was then enlightened by the nakedness of his conscience. Taking a bite of the forbidden fruit would manifest the onset of the naked truth of the quote-unquote story of mankind. This is exactly how I learned the secret language of symbolism. Quote-unquote Camula Flor, meaning forbidden love, a song/album created by the singer Selena, her name meaning moon. Fruit is also a slang term that means gay, quote-unquote man. I'm a transgender male symbolizing woman, the brain/spine, with man's body. That is considered to be the quote-unquote Garden of Eden. Planet Earth, the forbidden fruit, the psychedelic mushroom, has purple veins filled with psilocybin, and it's shaped like the male genitalia of phalanx. The male genitalia creates sperm that fertilizes eggs, technically in order to spawn off new life. The psychedelic mushroom, shaped like a phalanx, enters one's mouth hole, and its effects spawn off the illumination of the conscious mind, influencing creation. The psychedelic effects stimulate the third eye chakra and heightens intuition, so that the conscious understanding of this world's existence is fully understood. The psychedelic mushroom thriving off of cow manure in a cow field is no coincidence. The third eye chakra's color is purple, and I'm at the point of transcendence. Because I've been enlightened by the truth, my auric field surrounding my body has turned purple. This contrasting of purple arises because my third eye chakra was stimulated by the psychedelic mushroom. All truth about this quote-unquote fake world delusion was revealed to me by my third eye, which is hidden. Also, my auric field's color surrounding my body is almost near invisible/hidden from the naked eye. Psilocybin in a psychedelic mushroom is purple. The myelin sheath covering the quote-unquote earth beneath the surface of land is symbolic of my auric field being purple. I remember making a YouTube video where the light was reflecting off my body and my auric field was purple. This happened at a time when I was microdosing from the forbidden fruit. The forbidden fruit, the psychedelic mushroom, is symbolic of my body. This symbolic phenomenon illustrates that I'm the ancient source, origination of quote-unquote man. I am the symbolic source of quote-unquote mankind, creating this world delusion through the conscience. Being a relic now at the point of transcendence would explain why I'm being quote-unquote served back to this quote-unquote squared sandbox delusion, which is this fake world lie. I am the forbidden fruit, a transgender male that has eaten from the tree of knowledge, the apple considering to be the psychedelic mushroom. My body is now infused with purple psilocybin, what once fed me the earth, I am now feeding it. Now I will speak of the magnetic field that covers the quote-unquote earth. I always wondered why heavy metals were added to vitamins, food, and water, along with the chemical trails that are being sprayed in the sky. The heavy metals were meant to infiltrate my body so that in conjunction with the magnetic field would allow this quote-unquote mad sandbox to manipulate my bodily movements. The heavy metals create a great conductor, enabling the airways to manipulate sound through antenna frequencies and 5G. The temperature can be raised because of the deployment of heavy metals in just about everything. All the information that I have stored in my memory bank through experience is used to create scenarios in this fake quote-unquote psychedelic world. This would later explain of the current health crisis I'm now experiencing. The truth was now clearly transparent, and because it was revealed to me, the quote-unquote delusional fake world lie could not exist. The magnetic field and the heavy metals is an example of how this exposed delusion is trying to take full control of my existence because I have eaten the forbidden fruit. I've become fully aware of how this delusional world is made possible. I bankrupted any value this fake world delusion had by manifesting the truth. For example, can you believe the nerve of this delusional world projecting quote-unquote people within my square sandbox? I feel completely depleted when I come across these quote-unquote projected people that try and have value off of my conscience. The effects of the psychedelic psilocybin mushroom dilates the pupils of one's eyes and creates a heaviness. You begin to see purple veins running up and down your body, and it feels as if something is pulling you downward. Before I was completely enlightened, I remember taking between 7.5 to 8 grams of psychedelic mushrooms. As I started to feel the effects, I could hear the faintest noises with great precision, and everything visible was magnified. The psychedelic trip became so intense that I felt like I was having a near-death experience. The psychedelic trance was so powerful that I felt the urge to regurgitate some of the shrooms up. After trying to puke to lessen the effects, I went to the cupboard and found some organic jasmine cooked rice in a golden can with a purple label. Before eating the rice, I had taken some charcoal to detox from the intense effects of the mushrooms. I then quickly started to eat as much rice as I could. However, my mouth became numb. It felt like the muscles surrounding my mouth were somewhat paralyzed. I laid down to try and sleep the effects off, and I remember repetitively chanting, "Please, quote-unquote, spirit, do not leave my body," because it felt like I was going to die. There was this vibrato noise going off in my brain, and eventually after, I fell asleep and woke up the next morning. The next morning, I was thankful to have survived this psychedelic mushroom trip that almost costed me my life. Life was starting to seem oddly strange as I was reaching enlightenment, and more so after surviving the intense psychedelic mushroom trip. The quote-unquote people projected through the computer started to directly communicate with me like never before. This was during the quote-unquote pandemic and at a time where I was isolating in my room. The after effects of the psychedelic mushrooms, quote-unquote forbidden fruit, the apple, and the computer all started to make perfect sense to me now. The quote-unquote veil was lifted, and I started to experience how everything was being materialized from my conscience. I was making a YouTube channel at this time, and now I understand why these YouTubers were speaking directly to me. Whether it was a pre-recorded video or a live stream, and it wasn't just random figures from YouTube, it was quote-unquote people on commercials or anything else that was projected on the computer screen. I started to experience the weirdest phenomena in my room, equivalent to some sort of poltergeist. The lights started to flicker on and off in the room, and there was this air current that would come out of nowhere. The delusional quote-unquote sandbox would use anything possible to trigger a reaction from my senses.